Germans invaded Holland, of course life changed, and I was very young yet, but I do remember quite a bit of it. My dad was very involved in the resistance movement, and he would, and his buddies with him, would go to Amsterdam and hide the Jews because the Germans didn't like the Jews. Actually, when they got hold of the Jews, they would be being killed. So that was part of his job. And then one day he said to my mother, "You know something, I'm doing this. I'm placing these people in our village." But he said, "I really feel that we should take in a family of Jews." And so they did. And they came, a married couple. They were elderly people, and they had a 19-year-old son. And they lived upstairs. And they stayed with us for 2.5 years. The neighbors next door and over in Holland, the homes are very close together. They could never go outside. There was one day a few days after they had come to our place, and we as kids used to play outside in the evening. And we played with the neighbor kids, and then my little brother said, we have a secret. He said that to the neighbor kids. Oh, the neighbor kids said, what's the secret? We have an uncle and an aunt and another guy living upstairs. And of course, that was rough. Well, he was just a little kid and he didn't know the difference. But when it got dark, we went in the house and I told my mom. And then my mother was quite upset because he said she didn't know either how to handle this situation, but she talked to my little brother never to do that again. Nobody is to know that we have an uncle and an aunt and their son living with us. So that's how it was, and they stayed with us for 2.5 years. A few times we had raids, and there were girls in the 17, 18 that worked with the guys, the underground guys. And when there were German jeeps or trucks coming down the road, and that would go towards our village, come to our village. And then the girls knew exactly which home had Jews living with them. And they would go to all the homes, and all they would do is open the door and scream, almost like a scream, "Hide the Jews!" And that went on quite often. We had a few times, and I can remember that as a kid, German soldiers come to the butcher shop and try to get some meat which was hardly available. But I do remember that one, and the German didn't say, the soldier didn't even ask, "Can we go through your house?" They just made it like it was their own place, they just walked right in. And I remember that they walked upstairs, and I happened to be upstairs with the Jews. But they just looked like this back, they kind of looked, and then he left again. We had in the floor upstairs, it was closed all the time, but it had a hatch, and whenever the raids were close by, the Jews went in that opening, and then they were dropped down to the main level, and they had to stay there until the Germans were gone again. And that was kind of scary at times. And I remember as a kid, I found it scary also. But yeah, we're Christian people, and we certainly prayed to the Lord every day and every evening to spare our lives. And I will end with liberation. When we knew that the Canadians were getting closer and closer, and we were one of the later ones to be liberated. But when the soldiers came to our village, and I do get a little bit, I still get in tears when I tell that story, because they came to our village, and when we knew that they were safe, that we could walk behind them, and when we were told that they had chocolate bars, then we walked behind them, and I was a bit on the shy side, and then I said, oh, I'm too scared to ask for a chocolate bar. And then my girlfriend said, all you have to say is, chocolate please. And then the soldier would go in his pocket and take out a couple of chocolate bars. He gave her chocolate bars, and that was really something else. Of course, we hadn't seen anything like that for years and years and years, because it wasn't available. So when I speak about the soldiers, the Canadian soldiers, I can't say enough about it, because they saved so many people in our country. And when we were liberated, and when all of Holland was liberated, it took a while. We were one of the first ones. And then the band came out that evening, and they played all those songs. And we were just, everybody was dancing and singing, and it was just unbelievable. Like again, I say, the Canadians, we have to be so thankful, because a lot of them lost their lives. There are huge Canadian cemeteries in Holland, and they gave their lives so we could have our freedom.
So, you're so well spoken. I don't have to guide you through any questions.
Okay.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about just since you've moved in and what it's like in the community here at Chesapeake?
Yeah, well, we saw the building process going on, and then one day I was in the vehicle with one of my boys, and we happened to pass by here, and I said to my son, I said, I wonder what kind of a building that is. It was a great big, what do you call it?
Sign?
Yeah, out there. And so we stopped and we read that, what was on the outside. And then my son said, Mom, you're coming to my place and we're going to check this out. So we did. We went to his place and he got a hold of the owners. And there was only one more place available. And then we talked it over, my son and I, and we called back and we said, we'll take it. And that's how it came about. And I can't say enough about this place. I just love it here. Just love it here. And my husband and I had a beautiful home, fairly new. And I had told my boys that I was planning to sell the house before all this came up. And of course they thought that was great because then I wouldn't have to call them if anything broke down or so yeah, I had to wait a while. I lived in another home because my house sold in no time, and I had to go move somewhere else for a little while, for about 3 months or so, and then I moved in here.
Very good.
And I really didn't know anybody here of the people that moved in, but it didn't take long, and I just love it here.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So what's a typical day look like here at Chesapeake?
What's a typical day? The puzzles upstairs, although I don't do a lot. I don't have that much to do with the puzzle, but we often sit and chat and the latest news and things like that. And sometimes there's a few women who don't feel that well, and they'll share that. And but I never hear a negative word about this place from anybody. So that's how I really feel about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
So do they do a good job at sort of facilitating community and relationship?
Yes, they do. Yeah. We have music usually once a month. Musicians come in from outside and we sing the old songs, and it's and we often have a fun time, and there's a guy who shows some old movies, so we'll have a few movies coming up in the near future too.
Very good.
And and the owners of Chesapeake, they're wonderful people, and yeah.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah.
Beatrice, I think we got way more than we even
Oh, you
for.
do?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.